Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we talk to our guests as much about what made playing that game special and memorable, as we will get into the context of how and when they had this special time with it in the first place. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that myself or my guest plug today, anything that we're showing off that we want you to find out about, there's going to be links in the show notes. So whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast catcher, if you scroll down in the notes, there's going to be links galore for you to find, whether it's social media, Discord links, other podcasts that we do, or even the Patreon that we've got here for the network, Super NPC Radio, where there's bonus stuff. There's links to that. I'll probably talk about it at the end of the show as well. But that's it for the housekeeping. Without further ado, we'll introduce our guest for today's episode. So please welcome podcaster and comedy writer whose graphic novel Youth Group is available for pre-order now. Please welcome Jordan Morris.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. So glad to have you on the pod. Like I was telling you earlier, I've heard you on podcasts for years, so it's nice to have another veteran podcaster on the show today. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here, bringing some of my hard-won podcast knowledge to your show.
I love it. Fantastic. I do want to give you some space, though, to share about yourself with the listener. So who are you? What do you want us to know about you as you join the pod today?
Sure, yeah. I'm a podcaster, as you mentioned. I do a show called Jordan Jesse Go that's been going for years and years over there on the Max Fun Network.
Great network of shows, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Max Fun. Check them out. Lots of good stuff over there. And me and Jesse Thorne of NPR's Bullseye, we just kind of shoot the shit every week with a guest. It's very podcast 1.0. It's a 17 or 18-year-old show at this point. So
wow. We
started the show in a time before formats, if you can imagine such a thing. In a time before podcasts had hyper-specific formats.
No show intros, no music, no stingers, just the raw voices of you two.
Yeah, I guess we have music, and we do have a couple of recurring segments, but the bulk of the thing is just shooting the shit.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's an old-fashioned show at this point, but yeah, we still love doing it. And I started a new-ish podcast not too long ago called Free with Ads that does have a hyper-specific format. Me and a great comic named Emily Fleming, we watch weird, kooky, sometimes classic movies we find on the Free with Ads streaming sites.
Awesome.
So we like to do that, and I'm also a comedy writer. I have written for stuff like At Midnight on Comedy Central, the original version of that, and a bunch of kids' animation stuff you might have seen, like Jellystone and Tiny Toons Luniversity, and I also do comics and graphic novels. My first graphic novel, Bubble, a sci-fi comedy, co-written with Sarah Morgan, drawn by the great Tony Cliff, came out a couple years ago, and my new one is called Youth Group, drawn by an amazing artist named Bowen McGurty. It is a YA horror comedy about teenage exorcists. So that's coming out this July, but oh boy, do we love a pre-order. So if you like the thought of teen exorcists fighting demons and singing embarrassing parody songs about abstinence, please check it out at bit.ly/youthgroupbook. That's a site you can find, and check out some of Bowen's beautiful art and get all those pre-order links.
That's so exciting. It sounds fantastic, and I'll definitely put that exact link in the show notes too, so the listener can just scroll down and click.
Bless you. So easy.
Hey, as someone who grew up in the church, immediately the title Youth Group just sticks out to me so much. And now I don't know if it is specifically church related, but if there's abstinence talk, I'm sure there's a chance. But the title just sticks out so much, and it sounds like such a fun concept for a graphic novel.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I also was like a youth group kid growing up,
yes.
And I think if you were, there will be a lot of like familiar cringe in this.
Ooh, yummy.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of again, as I mentioned, abstinence themed parody songs. kind of the goofy games you associate with going to one of those cool youth groups. But the premise of the book is, what if those dorks actually had to fight demons? So
Yes.
Again, I think fun for many different age groups, fun for many different readers. But I do think if you were in a youth group or any kind of like similar, young person's religious organization,
Yes.
you'll hopefully there's a lot of specifics in here you'll like.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'd like to ask you a little bit about it too. Like, how long have you been working on youth group, and is there anything else you want to share with us about that process at all?
Sure. Yeah, youth group has been in the works for a while now. I think I wrote most of it during the pandemic. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So graphic novels, especially those made by my wonderful publisher, First Second, take a long time. The writing of them doesn't take that long, but drawing them and publishing them and shipping them out definitely does. And I was thrilled that Bo and McGurty wanted to work on this, but their schedule, a packed dance card, Bo and McGurty, a very, very talented artist. And so we had to wait for them to finish up a project. And then once they came on, just did a great job of drawing it up. And hopefully it'll be in everybody's hands come July.
Gosh, that's so exciting. I'm sure you're wrapped up in the excitement of this just being on the verge of being released. Do you have something else that, like, are you already working on your next thing that you're excited about?
Yeah, let's see. I don't think I have anything pluggable at this point.
There we go.
But
happens a lot on the show.
Yeah. But yeah, I just want people, hopefully folks check out Youth Group, and I guess I can say that I'll be doing a bunch of Comic-Cons and book events starting in the summer. So if you have a local Comic-Con or a book event, hopefully I'll be there. And if not, I definitely want to hear about it. So yeah, if anybody has a smaller local Comic-Con book event that they love, hit me up on social media. I'd love to hear about it.
Ah, that's exciting. Well, congrats again on just the eve of this thing dropping. Did you get to share everything you wanted about yourself with the listener?
Yeah, let's see. What else? I guess pertinent to this conversation, I love video games.
Yeah.
I've been playing them since I was a kid. We had a gosh darn Atari 2600 in the house, and an NES up on through the other consoles.
I love it. It gives us like a really good idea of, like, because I have all walks of gamer on the show, whether it's someone like yourself who is seemingly born with a controller in your hand or friends who mostly watched siblings play games.
Right.
And one of the things that I really enjoy about this is that it's more about, this podcast ends up being more about the person and their connection to the game than like having to be a big gamer themselves. But I do love when I get somebody like myself on the show who's like, I could talk about games for an endless amount of time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get into your history with games. Before we do that, though, will you introduce what you've brought on for the main event and call me by your game?
Yes, my game today, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike.
Can't wait. Truly doing, like, this is a game I've been familiar with for a while, but
cool.
In doing research for this episode and, coming up with fun facts and recommendations, it doesn't always happen that I'm interested in the game that someone brings on, but even just watching the sprites move around and stuff, it got me really pumped to hear from you and what this game means to you. So,
oh God, yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. And it is a gorgeous game. You mentioned the sprites, hand drawn, 2D. Yeah, it's still a gorgeous game. Even it is. It's like, what is 26, 27 years old at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it still just looks as cool as the day it hit the arcades.
Well, I'll be so excited to hear about that from you in the main event in the second half of the show. But let's get into that history of games of yours. You had sort of set the table for us by talking about some of the early consoles you have. Where do you want to start with that?
Sure, yeah. So I definitely always remember there being games in the house. Again, Atari 2600. I remember bringing home that NES.
Oh, wow.
On the first day, I think we got ours at Sears. It came with Rob the Video Robot. And
my gosh.
And the light gun that you used to play Duck Hunt. So we had all the peripherals. And yeah, I just played a shit ton of video games. I think our next one was the Genesis. I'm a big Sega kid. And then, but I was also, an arcade kid. I think I kind of grew up in the late 80s and 90s. So like arcades were a huge deal. Going to the mall with mom. She'd give me a couple of bucks and I'd hang out in the arcade while she shopped. And
The golden age.
yeah, I know. I love it. And I still, obviously arcades a little tougher to find these days. But yeah, if your barcades and your occasional mall that'll still have one. I always love hanging out there and playing video games in public. And yeah, like fighting games were huge for me. I distinctly remember the first time seeing Street Fighter 2 at Lamppost Pizza and just being like, what's this? I need to know everything about it right now. And Street Fighter 2 was such a fun game. And like, I was just, in it from the beginning. And obviously that game has so much like lore around it, not just like in-game lore, but also just like finding all the special moves, finding all the combos, kind of later on when they started adding like secret characters and like then there was like glitches that people said were hidden secret moves. So there was a lot of just like trading information on the playground, getting information from like Game Pro magazine. And and I definitely also remember, Mortal Kombat coming out a few years later, and like it being very cool. If your family had the internet, you could print out a list of the fatalities on like dot matrix printer paper. Where you had to rip the sides off, and if you brought that to the arcade with you, that was like huge social capital right there.
Wow.
Yeah. So not only are those games super fun, and I love how they've evolved, and I think the modern iterations of those games are so fun, but just like, there being this kind of like secret, fun little community around them was always a blast.
I love that. I think I was so fixated on the pizza place. Did you say Lamppost Pizza?
Lamppost Pizza, yeah. In Mission Viejo.
Where are you from, too?
It's still there. So I grew up in Orange County, California.
Oh, gotcha.
And Lamppost. Yeah, Lamppost was just our pizza place. It's where you went after the T-ball game.
Great.
It's where you went when it was just kind of the kids hangout spot, and they had an Addams Family pinball machine.
Okay.
They had a Street Fighter 2, and they had like a Neo Geo with a bunch of different games on it. So, I mean, that was a fun night right there. Get yourself a pitcher of RC Cola and live it up.
That's amazing. Do you remember, and this might be getting into the Street Fighter 3 of it all a little bit, so apologies if I do, but do you remember early on having a main in Street Fighter 2?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think like the concept of the main character that you use and train with was like foreign to me. But like I definitely had favorites. I've always kind of been a Blanca guy, even in like, the newest game, Street Fighter 6. I'm still doing a lot of Blanca. And obviously like that's such a cool character design. The like green monster that has an electricity force field, just like, what does a kid want to be more than that?
Truly. Or just a regular blonde guy named Ken, who is also cool.
Yes, who's also very cool.
Yeah.
Just a normal blonde guy. And but I also played a lot of Chun-Li too. Chun-Li's always been like such a fun character, and I love how she like kind of moves differently than everybody else in the game. I think obviously everybody has their own like style and speed and stuff like that, but yeah, her being able to like jump off walls was so cool. And I mean, in another like totally iconic design.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I know you were talking about, going to this after T-ball or just hanging out.
Yeah.
Was this, I'm digging into this one part of your history a lot, but were you an only child? Were you playing this with siblings as well?
I have a younger sister who was never that into video games. We played a little bit together, but it was never quite her thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was mostly playing Street Fighter like alone, or like you could play with kids at the pizza place.
Yes.
And then sometimes that would lead to like, having to interact with like an older kid. If I was like 9 or 10, you have to like interact with a teenager who's playing it. That was always kind of a weird little like peek into the world of teens. You got to like interact with a teenager,
like intimidating in a way.
Totally. Yeah. And if if they didn't like what you were doing. They would talk shit. They would do swears at you. That was always really terrifying. So, yeah, I know. And I'm sure when I look back, like the kids in the pizza place in the arcade were not that much older than me. Like if I was 10, they were probably 12. But to me, these seemed like fucking grown-ups, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And
that seemed like a gulf of age back when you're that young.
Absolutely, yeah. They had band shirts and, you know, maybe they smoked out behind the place. So, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, definitely like a lot of Street Fighter-based memories in my childhood.
It's really cool. You had started to get into some like where you went with gaming after this era. But I can't quite remember what you said. Did you continue to gather consoles, or were there ones that you were drawn to after this?
Yeah, I've always had consoles. I think we went after NES. We went Genesis, and like big Genesis guy. That's a very like beloved era of video games to me. Ooh. And then and I think after Genesis, I think I went full PlayStation and never really looked back. I think the PlayStation's always been just such a great console. A lot of great fighting games on PlayStation. And then, of course, like, it almost seems like, I guess I have always had a Nintendo console, too. Sure. I mean, I have a Switch now. I love it. But yeah, that almost seems like a given. It's like, well, you have to have the Nintendo console.
Sure, yeah. They've always had us with their, like, it's their licensed stuff. Their, like, first-party stuff is... If you enjoy it, it's hard to sort of, I guess, tear yourself away from it and just stop playing like the Zelda or the Mario or what have you.
Yeah, you always want to play the Zelda and the Mario. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. It's so tough to like feel like you're missing out on those. I think I've skipped a couple of Nintendo consoles, but I had a Wii and a Switch. So
nice.
And it's again, you can't miss out on those Marios and Zeldas. That's like
it's true.
It's so they're just so well designed and like they're always a blast.
Yeah, it's like the only place you can get them to. When you think of, just to briefly touch on your Genesis and then maybe PlayStation, are there like a couple games that maybe outside of Street Fighter that you think of when you think of your time with those consoles?
Oh, yeah. Certainly with Genesis, the Sonic games. They're great. Cold take. Yeah, but also like played a lot of Golden Axe, played a lot of Altered Beast. Stuff
Golden Axe is getting a series soon.
Golden Axe series coming soon. Yeah. That's kind of a funny, like not super likely adaptation that we're getting, but I think it'll be fun. I actually know some folks working on it, and I think it'll be fun and funny.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm good friends with a couple of the voice actors, and I was like, I'm sure they've never even heard of this, but they will be fantastic in the series themselves.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. It's like a deeper cut game. It has not had a lot of like reboots. I don't think it has had a prominent reboot in some time. So yeah, it is a little bit more, maybe more of a blank slate that you can mess with without a lot of people getting cranky that you changed the lore. Although I'm sure there's someone. I'm sure there is.
I was going to say... Yeah. You'll say that, and then we're just going to have just the Golden Axe mob of like 7 people who are upset when that comes out.
They changed the region that Death Adder was born in. Okay.
There's Death Adder?
Yeah, I think that's the name of the main villain in Golden Axe, Death Adder.
Yeah, that's great.
Again, I could be wrong about that. That could be things that the Golden Axe Hive is coming at me for.
And when it comes out, they're going to find this episode, and this episode's just going to be in the line of sight. Yeah. That's cool. And then did you have like one or two that come to mind for that PlayStation era for you?
Oh, yeah. So PlayStation, great game system, obviously. The Resident Evil games were so much fun on that original PlayStation. Metal Gear Solid. Oh, my God. What a mind blower that was. Those first Final Fantasy 7 and 8, right? Or was 8 on the... 8 was on PlayStation 1, right?
Yeah, I think 9 as well. So those 3 in
there you go, yeah.
It was like in 4 years, all 3 of those came out.
Yeah.
Just an unreal run of how quickly games were produced in the past.
Totally.
That's amazing. So is there any based on the game you brought on for today, did you end up getting a Dreamcast?
So here's when I got a Dreamcast.
Mhm.
Dreamcast was the first place to have a Street Fighter 3 that you could play at home.
Mhm.
Street Fighter 3, and I know you've prepared some history of the game.
Please.
Kind of a bomb at launch. Street Fighter
Mhm.
3 was like it was at the time considered like a disappointing follow-up to one of the greatest games ever. So like the demand for a home version of Street Fighter 3, I don't think was mighty. But the Dreamcast got it eventually. Dreamcast got a lot of cool fighting games. Like if you're a fighting game fan, Dreamcast was kind of the place to be for a while, despite their bad controller that was bad for fighting games.
Yeah.
But I did not have a Dreamcast at launch. When I got to college, there was a cool dude in my dorm named Nathaniel. Nathaniel not only had a Dreamcast, but he like pirated a bunch of Dreamcast games and just burned them to CDRs.
That
The
sounds right.
Dreamcast, I guess, famously did not have a lot of pirating protection. So just like you could just burn a Dreamcast game onto a CDR, and he just like had wallets of these things.
Wow.
And this is not I don't condone piracy. These were my younger days, and I regret it. But yeah. But so I think we just got like at the time, this was maybe like 2001, 2002. I think we just got like used Dreamcasts at GameStop, maybe even Blockbuster. We might have even got these at Blockbuster Video. And yeah, we just kind of like played them in the dorms. And I think that's when I got really into Street Fighter 3.
Ooh.
I was kind of late to like partying and drinking. I was a timid kid.
You're not alone here.
I was a youth group kid.
Yep.
And so like when I got to college, like the thought of going out and partying was super overwhelming. So I loved that there was just like a dude in my dorm who wanted to hang out and play Street Fighter. And yeah, that was kind of my like comfort zone for a while. But I got really into the game and would like find arcades that had it, and I still play it. I'll rebuy the damn thing every time they release it.
That's cool.
Yeah, they put out collections and downloadable versions of these things every couple years, and I'll just like buy it without thinking about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just kind of curious about the Dreamcast of it all, considering, like you said, it was the first console that this game was ported to from the arcade.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Also, where just for contextual purposes, where did you go to college?
UC Santa Cruz up there in Northern
Banana
California.
Slug, very
Banana
cool.
Slugs, yes, go Banana Slugs, world's worst mascot. Yeah.
Amazing. Where did your journey with gaming take you from here? Are there any other significant stops you'd like to make as we go down your road of history here?
No, I guess something fun I could mention as far as like history goes is I've gotten to work on a couple of video games. I've gotten to like do some writing for video game
Very cool.
lore and stuff. I helped punch up some of the cutscenes for Crash Bandicoot 4, which is really, really fun.
I heard that was fantastic.
It's a great game. Yeah. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time.
Yes.
Is the funny, punny title that they gave it. And yeah, so if you play that game, I wrote a couple of the cutscenes and some of the like in-game chatter that the characters do. And yeah, it's a really, really fun game. If you like the Crash games, it's just such a fun late sequel. And a MMO that's not around anymore called Rumbleverse. It was kind of a like Fortnite for pro wrestling, I think was the pitch. And yeah, I helped them with a lot of their in-game lore and some dialogue and stuff like that. I loved that game. It was so much fun. And it got taken down. A real bummer. It was a fun game that I think was only going to get more fun. But
seems to be a trend with a lot of like MMOs or like live service games is they don't if they're not like I guess incredibly successful, that's just happening to them.
Yeah, it's such a bummer too. And yeah, especially this one was great. I don't play a lot of like online games. I definitely didn't play a lot of battle royale games, but this one was so easy and fun to jump into. I think because it had a lot of fighting game stuff in it that I was familiar with, so it felt a little more familiar than like Fortnite or something like that. But yeah, I loved it. Hopefully it gets a chance to come back in some form or another because it was really cool.
That's fun. I got a couple questions of you for you based on those stories. Is that I'm not a wrestling fan myself, but did you come into that being a wrestling fan, or was that kind of new territory for you?
No, totally. Yeah, I don't follow pro wrestling. I watched it a little bit as a kid, like in the days of The Ultimate Warrior and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So yeah, I definitely didn't do a lot of wrestling, but in my interview, I kind of talked about how much I loved fighting games and about how. So yeah, they kind of like laid out the general premise of the game, and I talked about like fighting games, and also like a lot of the stuff I wrote was for an announcer, and I'm like, well, of course you want this to be like the announcer from NBA Jam, and they were always like, yeah, that was kind of what we were going for.
Oh, great.
So yeah, those were the things that I kind of like connected with the team over there on. So yeah, but I definitely talked a lot about how much I love Street Fighter and fighting games. So
yeah, that's really cool. And the other question I was gonna have for you was, was that your first opportunity, or was it Crash, and sort of did that come about through you just being a comedy writer?
Yeah, so Crash was kicked down to me from someone who couldn't do it. They someone had a contact, and they the folks at Crash had a really cool lore team there already, but someone said like, hey, maybe we should bring in a comedy writer for a couple weeks just to take a pass at this stuff. And it got kicked down to me from someone who wasn't available, and awesome. I had a goddamn blast. It was so much fun, and that game turned out so great.
Yeah, that's cool how those opportunities can just maybe something unexpected like that can just come up in your life.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's neat that I like, I love video games, but never like thought about there being a place for me to work in them, and it's just really cool to like have a way to contribute to a game. It was really neat. Not something I ever thought I would get to do.
Yeah, that's so funny. I can like a theme that happens on the show is I like to make things about myself, and I can totally relate to you in that sense. Being a comedy writer and a performer and an actor myself, is that I never, despite inundating myself with video games since I was a young kid, never even considered working in them until this last year, and since then have gotten into like the indie game scene in LA with an organization called Glitch City, and so through that, and having a lot of friends who also work in the games industry, am working on a couple games with friends, which is really exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah. And like, I don't know about yourself, but I have no programming ability. It's truly all just like narrative writing, character, joke writing.
Right.
Like the game we're working on now is just basically one big joke machine, kind of like a classic point and click.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's just it's really fun, as I hope you felt too. Just fun to use like your comedy skills in just another medium. It's really, and in a different one too.
Totally. Oh yeah, it's a blast. And yes, no programming skills here. We even had some challenges setting up this very basic Zoom recording. So yeah, on my end. But yeah, I again, it's something I like never thought I would work in. And honestly, that kind of applies to comics too. I kind of thought, because I never learned to draw, I would never get to like work in comics. But yeah, being able to like kind of mess around in this genre that you really, really admire is so much fun and so rewarding. And yeah, it's nice to just be like responsible for like the jokes and the dialogue and the characters, and assume that other brilliant geniuses will make the thing readable or playable in the way that they do. So
totally. Yeah, I bet there's a lot of sort of a lesson in just like trusting that collaboration when you are bringing one element to the table as opposed to like all of it.
Totally.
Yeah. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing about that and letting me ask you a little too. Didn't know about the game stuff. That's fun. Last couple questions about your history with gaming. The first of which, has there been a game or two that you've been playing recently that you wanted to highlight?
Oh yeah, let's see. I've played a couple of great games recently. I will say that the most recent iterations of both Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter have been fantastic.
Nice.
Mortal Kombat 1 came out. I know they're resetting their continuity, kind of, sort of, but not really. The Mortal Kombat lore is wild. It is out of control, and I would be surprised if anyone other than the people who made it was really following it. But it is really, really fun, and the way that it plays out is totally a blast. So Mortal Kombat 1 came out last year and was so much fun. It was a blast. They really like get what's fun about that franchise. The like fatalities are insane. They're just like hilariously grim, and they throw in those guest characters, so it's fun to see a Homelander pop up in Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. So the Mortal Kombat game was great, but I think Street Fighter 6 is a masterpiece. I think it's the best Street Fighter game. I think they just did a gorgeous job with it, and not only like made it really like tech for people who are serious about it, but there's a lot of entry points for people who are more casual about it or remember it from childhood or just want to give it a try. There's a lot of great little concessions for people who are not hardcore. There's kind of an easy mode with the controls to where it controls a little bit more like Smash Brothers, to where like instead of a special move requiring a kind of joystick move and a button push, it's just more of a button push with a simpler joystick move, forward, back, down, that kind of thing. And combos are a little bit easier. It doesn't require like the hyper specific timing. It's more kind of like about just kind of like knowing when to take your shot, and you can combo a little simpler by holding down a button and pushing another one. And there's a really fun story mode. There is a like story mode called World Tour, where you kind of create a character and you take them through this wacko little espionage plot by running around the city and just fighting whoever. It's kind of like, looks like Grand Theft Auto, and just anyone you meet, you can challenge to a fight, and then you beat them up, and then they shake your hand and leave. It's so funny. It never stopped being funny to me, and you can kind of dress your character up and stuff that will give you little stat boosts, and you can add new moves and train under a master. You find the like characters from the game in the game world, and they'll like, so you could train with Chun-Li, or you could train with Dalsum or Ken or whoever, and then you can kind of get their move set and power those up. So that's a great way to play the game. And you never have to like go online and get your ass handed to you, you know, which I think is a reason a lot of people wouldn't pick up that game. It's like, it's just going to be me getting the shit kicked out of me by someone in Korea, right? But
or like these people who it's like their job to play the game.
Of course,
Well, for you in the World Tour mode, are you the type of person who you're like, I'm creating Jordan in this game, or do you create like an original character? What did you end up doing?
Oh, I don't love sitting there with those create a characters. Some people do. It's just not fun to me. So any game that has a create a character, I'll do the basic template and maybe make a couple little changes. But in this case, my guy kind of sort of looked like me. I gave him like curly hair and just did some very basic cosmetic stuff to him. Gave him a couple of tattoos, but the creative character stuff has never been super fun for me. I know some people love it, but I just kind of like get me to the game. That's kind of my feeling.
Awesome. Just kind of curious. I'm not a fighting game person myself. I enjoy them, but I hosted a fighting game night like last year, and someone brought over their PS5 so we could play Street Fighter 6, and it was I was equally just like astounded by how great it was, even for like a newcomer, like for all the details you said. I just, of course, think, preparing for this episode, I was thinking about it today, and I was like, dang, that game sure was good, and I feel like I didn't hear enough about it at like the end of the year, but there's only so many games you can talk about.
Of course.
Last question for you is, do you have a game that you are looking forward to playing, whether it's one that has yet to be released or one that you just haven't got around to yet?
Oh, sure. I'm a big, other than fighting games, I would say my favorite genre, maybe even more than fighting games these days, is I love a Soulsborne game. I love a FromSoft, hard as heck action RPG. So Elden Ring was like one of my favorite video games of all time. And there's some Elden Ring DLC coming. So I'm kind of preparing for that to take over my life for the remainder of 2024.
Yes, you've got that in June, I believe, and then Youth Group coming out in July.
Yes,
Just two equally momentous events.
What a year! What a year for me, Jordan. Yes, I'll remember it always.
That's exciting.
So hopefully I don't cancel any promo appearances because I just want to play Elden Ring DLC.
But, you just can't put down the controller.
I know. I'll try and have to knock it out in the month that in the month before the book comes out. That won't happen.
Yeah, right.
That game's going to take 6 months, a year to finish.
Truly. What was your entry point to the Souls series? Was it Elden Ring or a previous game?
No, mine was Bloodborne. So
Okay, cool.
those games had been kind of been building their fan base for a couple of years, and it was one of those things where people would recommend it to me, and I was like, "This doesn't sound fun." And I think that's that's the cliche about the FromSoft fans, right?
Sure.
Is they'll describe an unpleasant experience and then expect you to be excited to buy the game. They're like, it's hard and you can't beat it, and every boss takes 3 days, and you're going to want to huck the controller, and you can't follow the story, and it doesn't tell you where to go, and they just describe an unfun game to you. And then you're like, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to pay money to do this? But yeah, so, they had been coming out for a couple years. It never sounded like my thing. And then a fellow video game podcaster / other podcaster, Griffin McElroy, and I were at the same event. And he was like, just trust me, Bloodborne. He's like, I think you can get it for $15. Just try it. And then I just kind of opened my Amazon app, and it was like, sure enough, the greatest hits Bloodborne was $15. So I'm like, I'll do it. I'll mess around with it a little bit, and just so I can tell these guys that I tried it, and I just got fucking hooked. Fucking hooked, and the difficulty level made sense to me. The obtuse lore, not the obtuse lore doesn't make sense, but I love how it's laid out, and I love trying to piece it together. The lore of those games is really again, it's obtuse. You piece it together mainly through item descriptions and these very vague cutscenes. So yeah, I just kind of I just drank the Kool-Aid. I just drank the fucking Kool-Aid out of the Estus flask, and I haven't gone back. And I just played every single game. I think I've played every FromSoft game.
Wow.
And and I've tried a couple of the other Souls-like games, but
Cool.
Nobody does it like Miyazaki and the FromSoft people.
Dang. Well, I'm really excited. As someone who hasn't dipped into Elden Ring, and the only FromSoft game I tried was Sekiro, which I was told is the worst one to start with.
Sekiro's
really
fun. I
for
don't
you
know
all.
that. I like the other ones a little bit more than Sekiro because Sekiro has fewer RPG elements to it. And I kind of like the leveling and the stat building of those games, but I don't know. They're all a blast, but hard to get into.
Totally. Well, I'm really excited for you and all my just countless friends who are so pumped for that DLC. Jordan, thank you so much for walking us down, at least part of your history with video games. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get into all things Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. So I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. I, your host, Connor McCabe, still here with Jordan Mortis. I kind of threw a D in there, Jordan.
It sounds kind of cool.
I'm going to go ahead and blame
Mortis.
it on the Jord part of your first name and not just me misspeaking. But Jordan, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Like I said, we're going to finally get into the main event. All things Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. See, it almost happened again with things, but like I told you as well, we're going to do some table setting for the listener on this game. I've got some stuff prepared for it that I've just basically pulled from paragraphs from Wikipedia, but if you want to jump in at any time, green light. Otherwise, here we go. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike Fight for the Future is a 2D fighting game developed and published by Capcom, originally released in 1999 for the arcades, and in 2000 for the Dreamcast, as we talked about earlier. In 2004, it was released as well on the PS2 and Xbox, and a downloadable online version titled Street Fighter 3 Third Strike Online Edition was released on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade in 2011. I assume that's one of the other versions that you bought at some point.
Oh yeah, you name it, I've bought it. I know they just like they've got a stranglehold on me with Street Fighter games. Anytime they like re-release those old games, I love the collections that have all the different games on them. So yeah, I've played all these.
I love it. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike is the second and final follow-up to Street Fighter 3, following Street Fighter 3 Second Impact. Like its predecessors, it runs on the CP System 3 hardware. Third Strike increased the character roster by adding 5 new characters, notably re-adding Chun-Li. It also added further refinements to the previous game's play mechanics and rules, and the game was well received, especially in this Third Strike version. Like you talked about, the original bombed and wasn't, I don't know if I would describe it, and you can probably help us here, as negatively received when it came out, but how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I think it bummed people out for a lot of reasons. I think that the main reason being they wiped out all of the old characters except for Ryu and Ken. And it was originally not even going to be Ken. It was originally just going to be Ryu and, 6 or 7 new weirdos. And like, and I think weirdos is a good way to describe them, because I think that like the original characters all were like, kind of like stereotypes of a nationality. You had, Zangief, who's the Russian bear wrestler, and E Honda, who's the Japanese sumo wrestler. And so like these new characters in 3, like not only was it not the characters that people loved, but it was like just fucking bananas characters. Like there's Oro, who is a monk with one arm tied behind his back, and Necro, who is this kind of like elastic robot guy who has a little girl that cries over him when he dies. And just like the characters were just like kookier, they were out there, they were not the ones that people loved. And so I think people didn't like that. People didn't like the character lineup. And I think that a lot of those characters are kind of beloved now, but at the time it was like, who are these people? Like where's Guile, where's Zangief, where's Chun-Li? Chun-Li wasn't in that first version. So I think people didn't like that, and I think that it just got so much more tech. It just got so much more like hard to play and reliant on precision and memorization. So I think that like a kind of tournament community had popped up around Street Fighter 2. And I think they were making a game for those people. They were making a game for people who were very serious about Street Fighter. Like the thing they added that was like controversial and also difficult for casuals was this thing called parrying, where instead of pushing back to block, you would hit forward right before someone hit you, and you would, instead of blocking something, parry it, and then you could do your combo in a little moment of stun. And that was just so fucking hard to do, and so, not forgiving with its timing. And I think that is something people love about the game now. They love that parrying, but at the time, it's like, this is so hard. This is not fun. I'm getting killed every time I try and do this. So yeah, I think it was a game that was for those tournament players, and just like people who liked putting a couple of quarters into Street Fighter and mashing the buttons at the pizza place. Like they were like, what the fuck is this? And so I think it like lost all those people. And it just became this like fussy game for snobs. And I think that, that was kind of the original Street Fighter 3. And then, like Street Fighter 2, they kind of had new versions, and Street Fighter, the second version, Double Impact: Giant Attack, was a little bit of an improvement. They added a couple new characters and some new stages, and then I think the common, the common feeling is that like they got it right with Third Strike. They added Chun-Li back, who is just like, I think maybe you could argue the face of Street Fighter, like the character you most associate with that game.
Just
like,
so iconic.
Yeah, I mean, Nicki Minaj wrote a song about her. I mean, for gosh sakes, come on.
That's the barometer.
Exactly, yes. Who has Nicki Minaj written a song about? Yeah, so I think adding in, and Chun-Li is great in that game. She's so much fun to play in that game. And yeah, just a fun, like, triumphant return to Street Fighter for her. And yeah, and they added more characters, and they're all fucking weirdos. They like stuck to that. There's Q, who is a robot detective. I forget when they added 12, but 12 is this like liquid metal, kind of like the T-1000 but without human skin kind of character.
Jeez.
And yeah, it's like that but those, you know, I think again they're all cool, and they're all like people who have kept popping up in other games, and I think people love them now, but yeah, at the time just a bunch of freaks. But I think that like I don't think Street Fighter 3 Third Strike ever became a like populist hit, but I think that to people who love Street Fighter, it feels like the perfect version of that game they were trying to make with 3. And and I think it's like, you know, it's not a lost game. They keep, you know, selling it back to me every couple of years, and I always buy it, and I know there's a lot of people who do. So I think that it's a fun testament to the fact that like they had a good idea, and that idea was to like make this very technical game that you could spend a lot of time mastering, that didn't rely on your nostalgia for those old characters. And it was like bringing in new characters and people who were a little weirder and operated kind of differently. So yeah, I think it's a good example of like, if you have a vision, you know, keep at it, and hopefully people will realize it one day.
Yeah, it just took a couple of revisions.
Took a couple of revisions.
It's interesting too. I guess I don't know how I didn't think about this, considering this game has, you know, the second Impact or whatever, and then Third Strike. How, Street Fighter 2 also has like several versions of itself as well. Like, I wonder if this was like a foregone conclusion that we're releasing we're releasing Street Fighter 3, but we're going to keep iterating on it.
Yeah, I wonder if that was the plan all along. Because you're right, as you said, Street Fighter 2 had Championship Edition and Turbo and Super Street Fighter and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and even, you know, other ones down the line. But so I think at this point, like, you could send a technician into the arcade and put in a new motherboard and, you know, keep milking people for quarters with a few changes.
Totally.
So yeah, I think that was, you know, a big part of like the arcade business, but also I think now you have that with like DLC. You can kind of keep people into your game via DLC, and I think they still do that with Street Fighter games. They'll add more characters, and they'll like tweak balance stuff and add new moves, and you know, charge you $20 every couple months for some new stuff, which we gladly will eat up because we are their pig pets and we love them.
Yep, they found us. But thank you for giving us just a little, you know, peek into what that was like at the time with that initial drop of the game and just sort of the iterations on it. Third Strike, which is the version we're mostly focusing on, I guess, today. Like you said, eventually people felt like they got it right. It is so well regarded at this point in retrospect, both for the gameplay, but also the sprite, like the hand-drawn sprite work, which you talked about earlier, which is so striking, not to make a pun, but like it really is, and it's so beautiful. And I've like, even just doing this research again, not us, like, what am I trying to say? Multiple places that I found are like, this is actually our favorite fighting game, period. So it's really got its, I mean, you're in sort of that crew of people. It's people who really adore it, for sure. So it you know, made up for, I guess, the initial launch.
Sure.
Well, you had started to get us into how you came to play this game initially with your story about being at UC Santa Cruz and the Dreamcast gang, as I guess I'm going to call you all now.
Yeah, two guys. We were a two-guy gang.
Yeah, that counts, right? Multiple.
Mm-hmm.
But did you want to give us any details as far as like anything else you remember, or was that just one of the games that you ended up playing in that Dreamcast collection that you were describing?
Yeah, it was a lot of Street Fighter and a lot of but there were some other fighting games in there. The Dreamcast had a lot of those SNK fighting
Yeah.
games, so like King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, that kind of thing.
Cool.
So we would play those, and a lot of Worms. Do you remember Worms?
Yes, I played it on the computer growing up.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Yeah, Worms is really fun. It is kind of a turn-based strategy game with cartoon worms who shoot bazookas at each other. Yeah, let's see. I was never that into Seaman, but I had a couple of friends who were super into the Dreamcast game Seaman.
Oh,
where,
infamous.
A fish with a human head is your pet, and you talk to him with a microphone that attaches to the controller, and you talk to him and raise him. Yeah, a lot of weird little experiments on the Dreamcast. I think maybe kind of like Street Fighter 3, the Dreamcast.
Sure.
Kind of a failure, kind of a middle kid at launch, but I think now Dreamcast heads are like, this thing was ahead of its time, and I think it kind of was. It had a lot of like fun, kooky ideas, and still a lot of games that are fun to play.
Definitely, yeah. It's not uncommon for me to have guests every so often who are like, sometimes I'll ask someone, what is your favorite console if you had to pick? And that is a kind of common choice for people who had it.
Oh, they loved it. Sure. Dreamcast people are serious. I don't think I'm someone who is like, it never got as good as the Dreamcast, but I had so much fun with the Dreamcast in college. And again, there's still some great games from that thing. Yes.
And apologies if you've already mentioned this, was Street Fighter 3 or even the Third Strike edition, was this a game that you were anticipating being a Street Fighter fan already?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I couldn't have been more excited for 3.
All right.
And and I don't think I was disappointed in 3, but I definitely thought it was weird. And you kind of couldn't find it anywhere. Like, I think, when we were kids, we maybe were about the same age. You're probably a little bit younger than I am, but like
I think so, yeah.
You probably remember the days when you just like every building you would go into would have a Street Fighter 2. Like there was one at the mall, there was one at the car wash, there was like, and a
convenience store.
Oh, absolutely, yes, exactly. There was just like they were just fucking everywhere, and then like. Everybody had it on the Super Nintendo. It was just not hard to play Street Fighter 2. But I remember like wanting to get into it as a kid, wanting to get into 3, but just not being able to find it. I think there was one mall that had it. And then I remember playing Third Strike for the first time at a mini golf course.
Oh, wow.
And that being so I think it was a little harder to get into Street Fighter 3 just because it didn't have a home release for a long time and was just in no arcades. And, needless to say, it wasn't in a, pizza place or a, car wash or anything like that. So anyway, so I think I was super excited about it. I think I was intrigued by it when it came out, but never got a chance to like sit down with it until that Dreamcast in college.
Okay, awesome. Now, when it comes to the game, I know we've touched on some of these details already, but when you think about your time with the game, what sticks out to you about Third Strike?
Yeah, I mean, I like how it demanded you practice it. It demanded a lot of practice, and I think that and again, I think it was kind of a comfort thing for me in college because I was like. A little uncomfortable to be there. I felt out of my depth. I was, not quite ready to try drinking or adult socializing, and I just kind of wanted to play video games. So the fact that there was just this thing we could just drill down on and practice combos and practice parrying, that was like really cool. And I don't know, it was just kind of a nice little piece of home for college, or it was a kind of a familiar thing, playing video games with my dorky buddy. This is like something from my old life. So and it was like always there, it was always like if I didn't want to go out and do a social thing, or if I wasn't invited to a social thing, I could always just sit down and play some fucking Street Fighter with Nathaniel, and we would have a good old night. So
That's great. When you think about your time with this game as well, did you have, I know you talked about, I think you were talking about Chun-Li earlier, but are there characters from Third Strike that stick out to you as ones that you had a lot of fun playing with?
Oh, yeah. When I play these days, I still like to play as Remy. Remy is a kind of a Guile-like character. He's a charge character, and he has some of Guile's moves. And I think lore-wise, it's connected to Guile somehow. I haven't dug into the Street Fighter 3 lore in a bit. And the Street Fighter timeline is very weird because Street Fighter 3 happens before 4 and 5. Or happens after 4 and 5, but before 6. So, wacky little timeline that I applaud them for keeping going all these years. So Remy is a really cool character. He's kind of a like spindly, hair in the face anime guy, and yeah, he's really really fun to play. And yeah, who else do I like to play in 3? Ken and Ryu were great in it. Chun-Li is great in it. Q, the robot detective, is kind of fun. He's this kind of big lumbering character who powers up every time he taunts. So Street Fighter characters, they've always had like a taunt that you can do, but I think Q was the first time where the taunt was like functional, where he would get like a stat boost every time he would taunt. And so that was kind of cool. Oh, and Sean is a neat character. Sean is he's kind of like a Ken and Ryu disciple. He's like a young, impetuous kid, and he does not fireball except for in one of his ultra combos. So like, whereas Ken and Ryu, a big part of playing with those characters is like spamming people with fireballs, right?
Yes.
And so you have a character that has, a lot of Ken and Ryu's moves, but without the fireball. So it's like, how do you play that style of character without spamming fireballs all the time? So yeah, he's a fun character and has a bunch of cool kind of like versions of moves you would know. So those are some of the faves.
That's really cool. It was fun just looking down, being familiar with like 2 and 6 in the Street Fighter series, looking down this character list, I was just like, there are so many, like you said, weirdos that I don't know, but I'm so fascinated by them. So it's fun to hear about some that you enjoyed. Were there, being someone who had a history with Street Fighter before this, are there like little tweaks or parts of the gameplay? And we talked about pairing a bit, so if you want to elaborate, you can. But are there gameplay bits that still stick out to you that you remember? Oh yeah, I think like I think this was in every version of Street Fighter 3, but as you're fighting in the round, you have a power meter that's building up, and when that power meter gets filled, you can do an ultra move. I think they're called super arts in Street Fighter 3, which is a weird name for them too. Even their naming conventions were weird in that game. But I think since the beginning, you could select from 3 of them. So you could, for Ryu, you could throw a giant fireball, or you could do a super powerful Shoryuken uppercut, or a version of the fireball that would like suck people in with a little like vacuum energy. Just like it felt customizable in a way. Like, oh, cool. It was that little thing, but depending on which of those super arts you chose, you could do different combos, and it kind of changed your strategy up a little bit. So yeah, that was a fun little element that they've kind of played with in future or in games that came after it. But that was like a super fun, intriguing part. You wanted to play not only every character, but you wanted to try all of the super arts too. Yeah, that sounds like a fun element of the game to investigate, as well as like trying out what could make for an interesting and maybe unexpected for your opponent combo with that different super or what have you. That's exciting. Do you, when it comes to this game as well, like have any hyper specific memories of a time you played it, or is it vague at this point? Like a particular match with Nathaniel, or just like a moment? Oh, I don't know that I have a like particular moment in mind, but yeah, I remember like, I don't know. I think that like, I do remember this a little bit. Fighting games, they ain't Halo, even though they are very popular. Like running into somebody who's like not only into fighting games, but
but like kind of knows how to play them is kind of rare. I had a job for a while for a TV network that's not around anymore called Fuel TV, and it was an action sports TV network. So skateboarding, snowboarding, etc.
All right.
And we would go out and cover events. Like I was part of the crew that would make the field packages, and the team that would go to these things was usually two people. It was me and the camera guy, editor, producer guy. Name was Mike. Great dude. Still friends with him today. And we were like, and he was a fighting game guy, and it was like an amazing thing we discovered about each other. And they would always give us they were a very cheap network. They were like, they were penny pinchers, and like if we had to fly, we would always get the worst flight. We would always get like either a red eye or one that left in the middle of the day. So there was that weird thing where your hotel room would kick you out, but you would still have to like wait for the flight.
Yeah. Strange.
So, and also like we were like in our 20s. So we were just drinking like maniacs. Like we were just like, we were on a work trip, and most of them were in Vegas. Like so much of that stuff happened in Vegas. We were just like constantly in Vegas, working while drunk. And I remember at a time just like we had that weird fucking thing where the hotel kicked us out at 11 and our flight didn't leave till 4 or 5. So we tracked down, I think it was the Excalibur Hotel and Casino, had a Street Fighter Third Strike. There's like little message boards where people will like let you know what arcades have what games if you're like an arcade enthusiast. So I think we went on like eventhubs.com and found a place in Vegas that had a Third Strike, and we just like played it for 3 hours until our plane left. And it was like, and we were just like, could not have been more hungover. We were just so hungover and just like played some hours of Third Strike until we went home. That's a fun memory.
That's great. That's some incredible context. And I love that, you not only had to work with this person, but you had that specific of a bond.
Yeah,
too.
Totally.
That's incredible. And it's fun too. I really enjoy hearing that like this game, as you'd hinted at, I think earlier in the show, that it has like continued to come back for you. Like, this was like originally like a college experience, but you also had such a memorable moment there. I love that. Well, one thing I'd like to start doing is to dive into just at the sort of as we round the corner on this part of the show, is to dive into just a little more context about like your life when you were playing this. Sure. So specifically when it comes to, being at UC Santa Cruz, I would love if you could sort of like put us in your dorm room where you had this set up. Could you do some scene painting on what that room was like?
Oh, yeah. Very sad. Very dirty.
Ooh, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, sad and dirty. I think I didn't have a handle on decorating. I think I not even like Scarface posters. I don't know what I had hanging up. Maybe like old band posters that I had brought from home. I was like a punk and ska kid. So maybe I had like a Mighty Mighty Boss Tones poster or something like that, right. Just like stuck in there with a thumbtack. And I think I remember I had a TV VCR combo that was sitting on top of a cardboard box, and I think cool. Like the PlayStation or the Dreamcast went underneath that at some point. And I think I just never did laundry. I think I just fucking threw it on the ground and let it pile up. So, yeah.
Sounds like college.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think I had the like stereotypical college asshole obsessed with video games style that I marinated in.
Yeah, I love that. When you were there, did you have a roommate? Were you living alone?
Let's see. I had a roommate. God, what was that guy's name? I had a random roommate that they paired me up with.
Sure.
Who I don't remember too much about, but I vaguely remember being a nice guy.
Gotcha.
He played flight simulators. So I was playing, me and Nathaniel were playing this game, and he was playing a lot of flight simulators.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for painting that scene for us a little bit. Well, as we sort of round this corner, continue to round it and almost finish up, is there any like other contextual moments from your life that you remember that you feel like sharing about from that time period when you were playing Third Strike, or did you get to do that?
Oh, yeah, let's see. No, I think, yeah, it feels thorough. I feel like
Awesome.
yeah. If anything else comes to mind, I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Well, just sort of on our way, before we head to the post-show segments, is there anything else? Well, I guess more what I want to ask is, can you sort of wrap up what place Street Fighter 3 Third Strike held for you?
What, like in a ranking of video games?
Or more so of like what, like if you had to put a bow on your like relationship with the game, like how would you describe that?
Oh, sure. It's totally just like it's a comfort thing for me. It's like,
Cool.
it's I got a couple of these things like watching an old rerun of The Simpsons.
Nice.
It's grabbing a fountain Coke from McDonald's. It's just like familiar, it's fun, it's a great way to relax. And yeah, I don't know. It always just is like a familiar, fun little piece of nostalgia for me. So yeah,
I
I
love
kind of
that.
associate it with like, yes, this was a nice time in my life, and this was a thing that like helped me feel kind of comfortable in a time and place when I was kind of uncomfortable.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, do you remember, this is a side question. Do you remember when was the last time you played Third Strike? Have you played it within the last year?
Yeah, totally. I think
All right.
I probably played it. I have the most recent Street Fighter repackaging that I bought is a like Street Fighter collection for the Switch.
Cool.
And Switch maybe not a great place to play a fighting game. They don't have a great controller for it. But they do have a really, really nice like package of Street Fighter games that includes Third Strike. So yeah,
Okay, cool.
I've definitely played it in the past 2 months, 3 months. So yeah.
Awesome. Just kind of had an additional curiosity at the end there. Well, Jordan, we've got a couple of post-show segments prepared for you based on this game, but thank you so much for bringing on Third Strike to share. That was so much fun hearing from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always love to talk about this dang game.
I love it. Well, on our way out, the first segment that I have prepared for you is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and that's where I'm just going to share a couple of fun facts with you about this game.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see if you're familiar with either of these. Both of these facts I'm pulling today are from a YouTube channel called Thorgy's Arcade, which has a YouTube video called Street Fighter, let's get the exact title, Street Fighter Retrospective Part 3, A New Generation. And the fact I have titled Third Strike Accidental Reveal. Now, upon the release of Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, so the second edition of the game they released that we talked about, Capcom's development team knew immediately that they'd be working on a third version of the game. This was accidentally revealed publicly by Hidetoshi Ishizawa when he let it slip to the press that as Second Impact came out, they were already working on Third Strike. Are you familiar with this at all?
I have. No, this is all new info to me.
So I guess that it was one of those things where I feel like developers are probably more media trained these days of what to keep behind closed doors. But Capcom did not punish him for this reveal. He was promoted to lead designer of the game after Second Impact, which I think was the first edition he worked on. He was instrumental in orchestrating fixing the parry mechanic from the second version, or from the first to the second, and he also led the team to a triumph in Third Strike by rebuilding the game from the bottom up. I guess because there was like not only just like issues that fans had with the game, but like character data issues and programming stuff. So yeah, an accidental reveal. This guy Ishizawa ended up being instrumental in the version of Third Strike you know today.
That's cool. Fun fact, an unsung hero.
Little fun fact right there. The second fun fact I have titled for us is Street Fighter 3 Identity Crisis Solved by Sound. Now, Capcom, one issue that I had heard, at least shared on some videos, including this one that I was doing for research, said that many fighting games had like sort of an identity, and that maybe the original version of Street Fighter 3 kind of lacked that, according to this YouTuber. So Capcom, when working on Third Strike, reached out to Canadian rapper Infinite to give Third Strike that hip hop tone, which you're probably super familiar with all with the music in that version of the game. Does that stick out to you, like the sort of hip hop nature of it?
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
the Street Fighter Third Strike character selection screen has a rap in it about
Yes.
selecting your character. It is so funny. It is so weird, and it's a fucking great song, but just such a weird thing to have in the game. And yeah, Capcom always has like kind of eccentric music choices.
Yes.
If you've ever played Marvel vs. Capcom 2, of course, you know the infamous jazz fusion song "Let Me Take You for a Ride."
Yes, such good stuff.
So yeah, they always have like fun kind of goofy choices with their music, and yeah, this character select rap is an all-time video game jam, if you ask me.
Yes, I listened to it kind of on a loop today. I'm not familiar with this Canadian rapper Infinite, but this change in audio direction was largely due to new sound director Yoshinori Ono. He reportedly urged Capcom to move the game's music in this new direction, and it had a number of changes as well outside of even the select screen that were in this new direction, that were catchy, excuse me. Other sounds also got a refresh in the game, including the announcer's voice. Now, one last detail is that the sound of the announcer when telling the player that their super, I think you said super arts moves or super meter was like full, the announcer says, let's go. Now, that is not an original Capcom recording. It's actually been revealed to be a sample from Adam West as Batman in the cartoon saying "Let's go" to Robin, which is
no idea.
just such a like weird thing. I think, definitely not. According to this video, their best speculation is that this is not something that Capcom reached out about doing. I think they just did it themselves.
Right.
But just very peculiar little detail that I thought was funny. But yeah,
Adam West, legendary delivery. The guy, no one could deliver a line like him. That's not surprising that he had a super memorable take on "Let's Go."
Yeah, right. Jordan Jesse, let's go.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, we could add a we could add a "Let's" in there.
I'm making loose connections there.
Yeah, sure.
That'll do it for the Fact Me by Your Game segment. I'll lead us into the final one of the podcast, the game recommendations. Now, Jordan, this segment is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me by Your Name, where I'm going to treat Third Strike like your passionate summer fling in Italy. Of course, like the movie, that fling is not going to work out forever. So in order to help you get over the heartbreak of Third Strike, I've got 3 recommendations that I think might just help you get it back out there in the dating world.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This will help me.
You're so welcome. I really feel so selfless. So I've got 3 for you today. They all have something in common with the game. Now, the first one is that if all you really want is you love third iterations and you want a third edition in a fighting game franchise, and instead of making the game better this time, you want it to be worse with a lot more tripping, I'll go ahead and recommend Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now, I know you had a Wii. Did you ever play this game?
I did play Brawl. Yeah, I like Brawl a lot. I don't know if I'm not like into the Smash community enough to know which is the like fan favorite version of that game, but I had a lot of fun with whatever Smash they put out on Wii.
Oh yeah, I played it to death. But this is one that probably gets the most criticism. But they did introduce a mechanic where sometimes when you just start moving your character, they just slip. Which I was like, we don't need it to be that realistic. But that's your first recommendation. Your second one is if what sticks out to you about this game is you just love the gorgeous hand-drawn art style, then I'll recommend to you a totally different style of game, The Curse of Monkey Island. Do you play these games ever, the Monkey Island series?
Not really. I know they are very beloved, but the kind of like story-heavy point-and-click games never quite my thing. But I know that Monkey Island is very beloved and like regarded as like one of the only funny video games.
Sure. Yeah. The first 2 games are more of like very sprite specific style, but this is, if you just look up Curse of Monkey Island, you'll just see some nice hand drawn characters and scenes, which are somewhat reminiscent of this. So that's your second one. Your final recommendation from me is if you're an Adam West head and you just want to play a game with Adam West in it, and there are a handful that he's been in.
Oh, yeah?
I'll recommend the strangest one I could find, which is called Golden Nugget. Speaking of your Las Vegas time, I guess, this is a gambling simulation game that was released on a few platforms, including the PlayStation, where Adam West plays a character named Hugh. His real name is Swain, but he tells you to call him Hugh for some reason. This is a game with live-action FMV sequences, and one of the strangest things I saw when watching gameplay is that a woman introduces herself as Tacy, short for Tracy.
Wow. I can't believe I've never heard of this. I don't know that I want to play this, but I definitely want to watch this on YouTube.
I think it's worth watching on YouTube.
Great.
I have a link saved because I was like, this is a real game. I have to show it to you. But anyway, your 3 recommendations for today are Super Smash Bros. Brawl, The Curse of Monkey Island, and of course, Adam West's Golden Nugget. Jordan, that'll do it for the Rex, and that'll bring us to the end of the show. So before we go and plug whatever we want, including stuff from earlier, thanks again for joining me. This was so much fun to have you on the pod.
Thank you. Oh my God, what a blast. Love talking about this game. And now that I have these great Rex, who needs Street Fighter 3 Third Strike?
Who needs it when you've got Golden?
Who needs it? Yesterday's news. Kick rock, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike.
There we go.
I'll take another minute to mention Youth Group, the YA graphic novel from me and Bowen McGurty. It's funny. It's got spooks. It's got friendship. It's got a little bit of romance. And again, if you're ever a Youth Group kid, you'll notice some hopefully some nice little specifics in there.
Yes.
And if you just like a horror comedy, if you just like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer or like a Shaun of the Dead, I think hopefully the book's bringing some of those vibes. And again, we love a pre-order. You can grab it on July 16th from your local bookstore or wherever you get a book. But hey, as long as you're over there at the place where you're getting books, why not give us a pre-order? Really helps out books and creators and stuff like that. So you can check that out at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, better yet, your local indie bookstore, or go to bit.ly/youthgroupbook and check out some of that gorgeous art and get some pre-order links for you. bit.ly/youthgroupbook.
I love that. That sounds so exciting and truly very up my alley. So I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Do you want me to put links to social media or anywhere people can find you as outside of that too?
No.
Cool.
I'm here for Youth Group. I don't want to confuse them with other plugs.
Awesome.
Just check out that link or look it up wherever you're getting books.
Killer. Well, thanks for plugging that. I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own. This podcast, the cover art is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at glenn.jay. The show is produced by and edited, and the original music up top is by Jeremy Schmidt. You can find him and give him a tip of your cap by listening to his podcast, Video Games, a comedy show, also on this network as well. You can find me on social media on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, on Twitch. I've got links to all that there. And then lastly is if you like me and the conversations I have with people about video games, check us out on Patreon over at patreon.com/super NPC Radio, where we have a ton of bonus video game podcasts that come out every month, including our quarterly games club, where we're currently going through the original BioShock in a book club style format. We've got new episodes that come out every Friday. There's stuff at every tier over there. So if you're interested, there's a link. But that'll do it for this episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.